Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Financial Issues. Great to be here with you all today. I am Seth Udinsky with my friends and brothers, Sam Case here with us, as well as the Studio A team here in our Philadelphia headquarters. Sam, good to have you, buddy. I'm excited for the show today, man. It's going to be a fun one. We are here, folks, and I hope you'll join us via however's comfortable for you. We got a phone line. You can call in at 610-363-1110. The phones are open. You can also join us via our live chat on financialissues.org/live or on our social media streams. If you're listening on the radio, welcome to you, our radio audience. I know we have a lot of listeners, and particularly in Florida, Texas, other parts of the country, CSN radio out west. So welcome to all of you. Grateful to have you if you're watching on NRB as well. Thanks for joining us today. Great to be here with you, folks. Hey, partners, make sure to check out the partner commentary up on the website, as well as the recent sell alerts that we just put out, I believe, late Tuesday night, early into Wednesday morning. So we got a busy show today, folks. Let's get right to it here. First of all, on today's show, what impact, I'll ask this question, what impact might the Trump administration's big, beautiful bill have on government health safety net programs, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the like? I'm having Rachel Barkley. Rachel is part of the National Center for Public Policy Research. She's going to join me to discuss this. She has a fascinating personal story about this, and she works in this space day to day. So I'm looking forward to having her on the program with me in a little bit. Speaking of guests, also, Timothy Plan has stood strong as the pioneers of biblically responsible investing now for more than 30 years. We are dearly devoted to them, and we're so grateful for them and for their partnership with us. Brian Mumbert of Timothy Plan joins me to answer some of the most pressing questions on biblically responsible investing. Brian is a dear friend as well. He's filling in for Art. Usually we have Art Alley on once a month. Art's not able to be here this month, so Brian's filling in for him. I'm excited to have Brian. Also, the great state of Florida. Many of our listeners from Florida continues to be great. Governor Ron DeSantis is on a crusade to end one of the most worthless, egregious forms of legalized thievery in our nation. We'll talk about that a little bit later on.
It's so good, Seth. I want to get to that topic right now. I know we have to wait. It's like Christmas.
Yeah, it really is like Christmas. So just wait a little bit, folks. We'll get there. Hang with us. Your calls and questions, all of it on Financial Issues today. Again, 610-363-1110. First, Sam, let's turn our attention back to the West Coast. So, of course, big news headlines there. There have been violent riots in Los Angeles over the Trump administration, working to put down those riots. They're happening because there's anger because of the deportations of illegal aliens that have been happening. Well, Trump is not just up against a handful of disgruntled Antifa mobsters. He's actually also dealing with a governor, unlike Mr. DeSantis, who has done some great harm to his home state, and that is Gavin Newsom and the once great state of California. Sam, what can you tell us about what's going on with the California versus Trump tax showdown here?
That's right. Well, this is separate from the ongoing issue of the riots, which actually I'm hearing some conservatives say, hey, just let California burn at this point, because Gavin Newsom is not willing to let Donald Trump in to fix the riots. So they're saying, hey, man, if you want to let it burn, just let California be California.
But this really is a shame. It's such a sad thing there, because it really was once a great state, and there's a remnant there, absolutely. But
got Ronald Reagan from California.
Yeah, you got Reagan from California, absolutely. I know we have faithful listeners out in California as well, but it's sad to see, Sam. Anyway, sorry.
But maybe the voters will only learn their lesson if they actually get to experience the consequences.
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so.
But this is a separate issue. This is an issue over the transgender debate, and it just is the latest in the ongoing soap opera that is politics, basically. Tensions do continue to grow between Donald Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom over taxes and the transgender debate. I know that sounds like a weird combo, but it's true. As this week, President Trump threatened major fines on California for allowing biological men to compete in women's sports. Presumably, those fines would be related to violations of Title IX. His threats come as a male athlete took first place in a state track and field event last week. Newsom has since responded responded to those threats with a threat of his own, posting on X, quote, "We, that is Californians, pay over $80 billion more in taxes than we get back. Maybe it's time to cut that off." So this might be the first time, Seth, that a California Democrat said, hey, maybe we shouldn't pay taxes. But that's what he said. And that post, well, that got the attention of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who said, hey, that's actually a crime, Gavin. He said Newsom would be guilty of criminal tax evasion if he did so, calling his threat, quote, extremely reckless.
Well, I think Bessent's right. It is extremely reckless. It's real, Sam. It's in response to a very reasonable demand from the Trump administration. It's not that complicated to keep women's sports for women. For biological women. I don't know if you knew this, folks. The elites don't want you to know this, apparently. There's a physical difference, generally speaking, between men and women. And especially when it comes to sports, we've seen that time and again.
That's why we call it women's sports.
That's why I call it women's sports. That's exactly right. Where males pretending to be women go and play women's sports and dominate. It used to be a punchline. It used to be a funny joke. Now we're seeing it in reality. It really is ridiculous. So very reasonable demand from the Trump administration. Reckless response from Newsom. Sam, if I didn't know any better, not only does this sound like criminal tax evasion, this sounds like a step towards treason. Sounds like a step towards treason. It sounds like California is actually doing a lot of what we saw back in the antebellum South, where you saw Confederate states start to make threats like this toward the Union before finally it broke out into all-out war. Now, I know, listen, we have a lot of listeners in the South. You love your Southern heritage. I love it as well. Absolutely. I'm just going to put this out there that there were those Southern states were Democrat controlled as well. Back
I was
in the
just
day.
going to say, Seth. Well, Democrats are being Democrats.
Yeah,
Times don't change, do they?
Exactly right. It's, of course, not all Democrats are like this, but many of them are, and so we're seeing this here, folks. This is coming also amidst a very public feud between several sort of players in this space here when we're talking about women's sports. Conservative activist Riley Gaines, who we consider a great ally, who's doing this work. I had the chance to meet Riley actually at a event with the FRC. Very, very nice gal. And then the liberal Olympic champion Simone Biles. There was a back and forth between those two. And so just interesting stuff there. This is part of that conversation. But Sam, I do hope that this can be toned down, because as frustrating as California is part of our United States. It's part of our family, and so we can only hope and pray that that there would be no, that Newsom's threat is just empty words. I think it probably is. Hopefully,
he's definitely running for president of the United States. That's what he's trying to do.
That's exactly
just
right.
Grab headlines.
That's exactly right. So we'll have to see how that goes there, folks. Good stuff, Sam. I really appreciate you bringing that up quickly here, folks. Let's take a look. You know what, Sam? Let's hold off on the markets right now, because I do want to get to this other headline before we bring Rachel on.
But Seth, it's called financial issues.
I know. But this one's pretty financial in nature as well, and you'll see why in a minute. So Republicans appear to be fracturing over Medicaid. Now, it's financial because, of course, Medicaid gets funded by the American taxpayer. Sam, what can you tell us about this?
And it's one of our biggest expenses.
Yeah, huge expense.
It's like a top 3.
Absolutely. What do we need to know about this little feud within the Republican Party?
It's an ongoing fight, Seth, even among conservatives, because congressional Republicans are at each other's throats over this issue of whether to cut Medicaid, how much to cut Medicaid, what is going to be the end result in this big, beautiful bill. Right now, leading the charge in defense of Medicaid is conservative Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, saying that he wants to keep it, and he also says that President Trump is on his side. Hawley said that Trump told him on a phone call, I think he shared this on social media, quote, "People who cut Medicaid and Medicare lose elections." So that's what Trump said, according to Hawley. Now, a White House spokesman reiterated Trump's stance, saying, quote, "The president has been clear, no cuts to Medicare, Social Security, or Medicaid." However, that spokesman did go on to say that Trump is in favor, maybe not cuts, but he is into some sort of reform, especially in areas of waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, that kind of sounds a little bit more like Chip Roy and Mike Lee, the congressman and senator. They're more for the reforms when it comes to Medicaid, especially when it comes to work requirements and things of the sort. They're firing back at Hawley, accusing him of, quote, "borrowing money to prop up wasteful spending." However, it should be noted that Hawley isn't completely against reforms. He says he's absolutely for cutting benefits for illegal immigrants. It is clear that something must be done, though, Seth, because Medicaid is expected to cost nearly $1 trillion annually within the next 10 years. So something has to happen.
So just to be clear, Sam, that's $1 trillion per year for the next 10 years?
Yep.
Wow.
We're not there yet, but if we keep spending the way we're spending, that is going to be the price tag.
Yeah, boy, that's a lot of money for in my opinion, I don't mean to offend people, but this is at least leaning towards a socialist-style program of government where the government pays health care to poorer people. Listen, winning elections is important. Okay, I'm not stupid. I'm not living with my head under a rock. We do need to be able to win elections, but there comes a point where you have to draw a line. I'll put it to you this way: is winning elections important enough when the price to be paid is that babies get murdered? I don't think so. I think it's the same thing here. I think babies getting murdered is a lot worse than money being spent foolishly, but I think the same idea can apply here. Losing elections is not the most important issue. The most important issue here is protecting your own people from being robbed through a socialist-style government program. So listen, I'll be interested to hear what Rachel Barkley has to say about this. She's coming on in the next segment, and again, she's got a lot of experience both professionally and personally with dealing with government programs like this. So you're going to want to stay tuned here, folks. Lots more to talk about on financial issues. We'll be right back after this break.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Through Crossroads Kids Club, lives like Dali's are being changed all over the world.
When I was 8 years old, my parents separated temporarily. It made me feel lost, empty, and without direction. Until one day, I went with my cousins to the Crossroads Club. This led me to know Lord Jesus and accept Him in my heart. He changed my life, and I don't feel lonely anymore.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachourschools.com.
My baby was like this big, and I saw his heart beating on the screen. I went from, I don't want this baby, to talking to my child on the screen. That sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to Mom.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shanna are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Folks, thanks for joining us here today on Financial Issues. I've got a very special guest. If you heard that last segment there, we were talking about what's going on with Medicaid, and so I wanted to bring on an expert to talk to us about this. I've got Rachel Barkley. Rachel's the director of the ABLE program at the National Center for Public Policy Research. She's got a decade of experience connecting members of Congress, state and national think tank leaders, corporate stakeholders, state legislators, governors, advocacy professionals, media influencers around shared goals. She's overseen the strategy for multi-state issue campaigns. She's executed many communication plans, managed the development of policy agendas, and advanced federal legislation spanning a variety of issues and committees through coalition action. She knows her stuff. And she also has a fascinating personal story, which has made a huge impact on how she approaches public policy issues, particularly concerning healthcare, disability, safety net, policy reform, etc. Rachel, it's a delight to have you on our program. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Seth. I'm so glad to be here.
Absolutely. What I'd like for you to do, please, is just begin by telling our audience a little bit about you, who you are, the work you do at the National Center, and then your personal experience as well, and how that has impacted this work that you do.
Yes, yeah, I'm glad to. So as you said, I'm the director of the Able Americans program at the National Center, which is a nonprofit think tank. And I came to this work after, well, thank you for reading my long bio there, but after a decade of work in public policy. So I worked on Capitol Hill. I was in the room during the last big, beautiful bill in the Trump administration, which was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and saw how bills are made at the federal and state level. And that was mostly in my 20s. I had gotten married in my late 20s, and my husband and I were expecting our first son the week that I turned 30. So we're happily awaiting our first baby. We had just bought our dream home in down Capitol Hill area, and everything was going according to plan A in our lives. We'd been married 3 years, and I had this healthy baby, and everything still was going pretty well. And then I had this neck pain for a while, but didn't think anything of it. Doctors didn't think anything of it. But then 2 weeks after I had my son, I woke up, asked my husband to bring me the baby, and could not move my leg at all. It was just mysteriously paralyzed. We go to the ER. We spent a couple of days getting tests in the hospital. You know, why is this healthy 30-year-old woman paralyzed? And find out that I had an extremely large tumor growing inside my spinal cord. It was just, the most unimaginable thing that can happen. Come to find out later, this is incredibly rare. So few people have this happen to them, and especially not young, healthy people. I had run a marathon in my 20s. I had climbed Half Dome. I was incredibly, I was a healthy eater. So this just came out of left field and knocked me off my feet. And ended up having a surgery to remove that spinal cord tumor. And praise God, lived through the surgery, and the surgery went pretty well, but it left me paralyzed from the shoulders down. So no movement. And I'm wondering, how am I going to be a mom? How am I going to be a wife? How am I going to be a woman like this? And went through, months of rehab. During my recovery period, I almost died from a pulmonary embolism. And finally, started seeing signs of life through lots and lots of prayer, healing prayer, and hard work and physical therapy. This is actually, next week is my 6-year anniversary of this happening. And I've walked a mile on the treadmill. I can move my arms and legs, and I have had 2 more healthy children since then. So, God's been good. I've had incredible healing. And through all that, though, I had this past in public policy. And once I experienced some healing, got back on my feet from this kind of medical trauma, I had the opportunity to work on policies that help people with disabilities, and was able to meld my personal experience with a disability now. I use a wheelchair probably 80% of the day. My experience being disabled, going through this crazy medical system that we have, and then and know how that affects policy.
Rachel, what a tremendous story. Thank you for sharing that with us. And I say yes and amen to that. What a testament of God's grace and protection over you. And congratulations on 2 more children and getting to be able to move body parts now. What a gift that is. That's just so cool. And that I kind of wanted to follow up with you on that, because I think that's really powerful for us to kind of hear. How did your experience impact how you now view these public policy issues, particularly when it comes to disability care?
Yeah, it really isn't until you go through something. This is probably, across the spectrum of things, but particularly with disability, until you have a family member, you yourself go through this, you don't realize how many things every single day impact you. So everything from sometimes when I go to a restaurant with my family, there isn't a way to get inside. There's multiple steps to the front door, and either I have to go through the back door in the kitchen, or I can't get into the restaurant at all because it's not accessible. So things like that. When we were house hunting to try to find a house that accommodates my family, that is one level that I can get in and out on my own, we couldn't find houses that were accessible to a wheelchair. And the very cost of living, people who have disabled children or disabled themselves, there's a high tax on us for medical care, for making accessible renovations in houses, for everyday things like outfitting our cars with hand controls to drive. There's so many expenses. It's very expensive to live like this. And then the most burdensome thing is if you have to depend upon the social safety net in the country. So we're talking about Medicaid and Social Security, disability insurance, because those programs, I found out, are just riddled with limitations that keep people with disabilities in poverty. So you can't get Medicaid health coverage, which covers an in-home caregiver if you need someone to help you with some medical tasks at home or to bathe you. So when I got out of the hospital, I was not able to sit myself up in bed, to use the bathroom, to shower myself for a few months. And private insurance didn't cover that kind of caregiving. And so my private plan didn't. And so my husband and my mom moved in to help us. But a lot of people don't have that option. What if you don't have a parent who has that physical capability to help you? And so I realized the only way in this country you can get that kind of intensive care that people with disabilities need is through Medicaid. But to get on Medicaid, you have to bankrupt yourself. You can only have $2,000 of savings. And if you're married, you can only have $3,000 of savings. So you can't save for and prepare for a future if you're a person with a disability. You're kept in poverty in order to get the health care you need.
Boy, that's so well said, Rachel. I'm so glad that you brought that to light for us. It seems just absolutely ridiculous to me, to get this kind of help from the government, you have to essentially make yourself poor. And it really does remind me, so many people, they'll use the fallback of, okay, we just need to get the government to provide more help and we'll be good. The problem is Ronald Reagan famously quipped the 9 most dangerous words you can hear are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And it seems like the help is often more harmful and hurtful. And so my question for you is, what is the solution? What's the solution to true lasting protection and care for Americans who have experienced the things like you've experienced?
I think what it comes down to, and I think about, especially when it comes to Medicaid, which is the program that was intended when Medicaid was created in 1965, it was made for the most vulnerable, a true safety net for the disabled, for elderly, for pregnant women, for children, the most needy among us. And over time, after the Affordable Care Act passed, this program was stretched to fund just based on your income. And it stretched, and over the past 10 years, 17 million people, new people, were enrolled on Medicaid. These are non-disabled people. These are people who aren't working, but could be working in a lot of cases, and could be on private insurance if they got into a job and got to work. And so the program has been stretched so thin that it's been watered down for those who need it most. And on top of that, there's 2 populations on Medicaid. There's the medically vulnerable, the truly needy that we talked about from the 1965 original Medicaid. And then there's this expansion population after the Affordable Care Act, the last 10 years. And the expansion population does not have to comply with that asset test that I just talked about. They don't have an asset test. So you're talking non-disabled individuals don't have to comply with that. Additionally, states actually get more money from DC. They get 90 cents on every dollar to fund the expansion population, the non-disabled population, where they get only around, it varies, but around 50 cents for every dollar for the disabled population. And so this inequity has driven poor incentives, stretched the system thin, and it has not properly had states focus on the disability population. And so, that caregiver care I talked about, people with disabilities really needing, many states, because they haven't funded it adequately, have wait lists. In Florida, the wait list is 22,000 people deep. So you have to wait through 10 years, 15 years to get a caregiver for your disabled child in the state of Florida.
Crazy stuff. Rachel, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention so very much and sharing your experience as well. I would love to have you back on our program. I know that we're running out of time here quickly, but before we end this segment, can you just tell our audience really quickly, how can they follow the work that you do?
Yes, you can go to ableamericans.us, so ableamericans.us, and you'll find all of our policy work, all of our op-eds, and I look forward to sharing more.
Yeah, that's awesome. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on our program. Your story was a blessing to me, and I'm sure a blessing to our audience as well. We'll be lifting you up in prayer also. What an encouraging story, and we're so grateful for you and folks like you who are trying to reform a system that truly is broken. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Seth. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Folks, again, that's Rachel Barkley. Rachel of the National Center for Public Policy Research. She's the director of the ABLE program. Make sure to follow those links that she had mentioned there, folks. Really, really good stuff there. I do hope that we can take to heart what she had said there. That's really good. Hey, quickly here, folks, before we come to the end of this break, the markets yesterday seemed to settle into a groove following two pieces of good news in the morning. You got the cooler than expected CPI reading and the tentative announcement of a renewed U.S.-China trade deal. Midday, late afternoon, much the same, though the indices did flip course. They went moderately negative. They were awaiting the latest details from that trade announcement. So the Dow finished flat. The S&P finished a quarter in the negative, 0.25% in the negative, and the NASDAQ finished 0.5% in the negative as well. Right before the markets open, pre-markets kind of hanging around the same spot there. So they're open in just a moment here. If you have to leave us, folks, we hope you have a great rest of the day. For the rest of you, more financial issues right around the corner. Stick with us.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
We're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
Are you a Christian seeking to align your investments with your faith? I'm Shanna Burt, host of the program Financial Issues. During our program, we share valuable information about the financial issues of the day, including how markets and the economy are moving and how public companies are behaving, helping you to make wise decisions with your investments and the money that the Lord has blessed you with. Using biblical standards, we provide you with valuable financial insight based upon Scripture, making it easy for you to invest in a way that aligns with your values. I can assume that most of you have investments in a 401k or IRA, but what I am sure of is most of you have no clue that the companies in your mutual funds may be funding the LGBTQ agenda, pornography, abortion, the list goes on and on. By listening to Financial Issues, you will learn how to get rid of those investments that are dishonoring God.
Become a partner today by simply going to financialissues.org/join. Click the green button to become a partner today.
I found out I was pregnant when I was 21 years old. For me, I was scared, I was shaking. I Googled places to abort. We drive there, and as soon as we get there, I open the door, and the first thing that I see is a bunch of Bible verses in the walls. They gave me a little counseling session, they gave me the pregnancy test again, and they do an ultrasound. And that's when everything changed. When I saw my baby, and when I heard her heartbeat, that was it. We decided with my boyfriend at the time, which is now my husband, to continue the pregnancy together. We started coming to the classes, doing our homework, getting counseling together. We've seen the hand of God ever since we stepped into the pregnancy center.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
folks. Financial Issues, thank you for joining us on the program today. It's always a joy. I'm thrilled to be here.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you, Sam. You're very welcome. Speaking of thankfulness, folks, very thankful for Rachel joining us on the program there. It was great to hear her story, and we look forward to having her back on. So, unfortunately, we're not able to get Brian on today. Brian is not feeling well, Brian Mumbert of the Timothy Plan, so we're going to have to get Brian on another time. Of course, I'm sure we'll be having Art come on in the future. But, folks, if you are interested in an investment organization that you do not have to worry one bit about your investments dishonoring God, Timothy Plan is the place to go. I am so grateful to have my investments with the Timothy. It's awesome. I mean, it is just really good. Their team is fantastic. We just love the Timothy Plan. So biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, retirement plans for investors who want to please God with their money. And if that's you, you got to check them out, timothyplan.com, timothyplan.com. You can call them also 800-846-7526. All right, Sam, so there's been some interesting news happening here as we kind of turn course with Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. What can you tell us about this? Couple things happening here. What have you got?
Well, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he is talking about what on earth is going to happen with all these ongoing trade deals with the United States. And he is saying some relatively positive things about them, saying the U.S. has 18 important trading partners. He was speaking to Congress about this yesterday. He suggested that those countries, quote, working towards deals in good faith negotiations would likely have extended periods of reprieve from Donald Trump's tariffs. So this would be countries presumably like the EU. It's not really a country, but it's a block of countries. But yes, the EU, India, Japan, South Korea, countries like that. Markets, surprisingly, were not too happy about what he said. As you said, they did dip a little bit. That could be because they were already factoring this in, or it could be because that Bessent didn't say that this is going to extend to all of the countries. Meanwhile, though, Trump is saying something a little different, saying that we might only have another 2 weeks of negotiations, and then all of the tariffs will go back into effect. For those left out in the cold, we're not going to extend those negotiations. He just said that right now, so kind of contradicting what Bessent said, and it does look like the markets are not too pleased about that.
Sam, you're exactly right. Not like terribly down, but the markets each opening negative territory. You got the Dow Jones is down almost 2/3, and the S&P is down almost 1/3, and the NASDAQ is down about 1/4. So yeah, that's exactly right. Now, I tend to think that it seems like what's happening here is this is some good old-fashioned, we've talked about Trump doing this a lot. He's making the art of the deal. He's negotiating. I think that's what this is. But the markets, they don't hear that. They don't see the long term. They just hear, whatever the next negative piece of news is, that's how we're going to react to it. So
if I had to guess what he's trying to do, I'm not Trump, so who knows what Trump's doing. He changes his mind all the time. But if I had to guess what he's trying to do, he's trying to put pressure on these countries by giving them this deadline so that they'll make a deal right now, giving him more leverage with China as they're finishing up their deal.
I think so. Yep. Good stuff there, Sam. We also saw some other interesting news with Scott Bessent. So obviously the relationship between Donald Trump and Fed Chair Jerome Powell is, let's put it nicely, tense, to say the least. It's probably a whole lot more than tense.
But is it as tense as Elon's relationship
probably
with Scott
not.
Bessent?
I don't think Donald Trump has ever body checked Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
That would not end well for the Fed Chair.
I don't think it would either. But interestingly enough, speaking of the Fed Chair, there have been rumors that when Jerome Powell's term is up in 2026, that Scott Bessent might be a potential to take over.
That's right. That is the report right now. That is just rumors at this time from Chatty Cathy's inside the White House. We don't know if that's true, but that is what the report is that right now at the top of the list for who's going to replace Fed Chair Jerome Powell in 2026 is our man Scott Bessent, which I'm kind of torn about that. I think he would do a great job as Fed Chair, but then he wouldn't be the Treasury Secretary. And right now, frankly, Seth, he's one of my favorite people in the cabinet.
Right. And, Sam, this brings up another topic with this, too. You have to wonder, does the job have more impact on the person than the person does on the job? Being the Fed Chair I would not want that job. I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to have that. That's a brutal job. It's very, very brutal. And what you said is exactly right. You have to fill the shoes of the Treasury Secretary, too, if you do that. So interesting things there. Of course, we'll be keeping an eye on that. We're not going to have to worry about that for another several months or so. I think it's early next year that Powell's term as Fed chair officially runs out. So that'll be an interesting kind of, not only is that something that, Trump's going to have to make a decision on, but that's a legacy defining thing. That person who he picks is going to survive past him.
Exactly. So as much as I might be sad that Bessent's out as the Treasury spot, this is presumably, we don't know this for sure, but let's say he is. Actually, that would mean we have Scott Bessent around for much longer. So that might be a better thing in the long run.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll have to wait and see with that one, folks. But I thought that was pretty interesting to see that. All right, Sam, let's do a little chat rundown here. I know so many of you joined faithfully, and it is such a gift, man. I appreciate, Sam appreciates, we appreciate here at the ministry, Shanna does as well, our faithful audience. It is such a gift to have a faithful audience who cares about this show and loves the show. So thank you all so much for your love for our show. John from Alabama, good to see you. John Nelson from Louisiana, great to see you. Matt from Georgia there as well, good to see you. Matt. Ian from Kansas, hello Ian, good to see you. I haven't seen you on the chat before. Welcome to the show, brother. I'm sure you've been there before. Maybe I've just missed you.
For a second, I thought you were talking about Ian Patrick.
Ian Patrick,
yes,
our good old friend Ian Patrick, who I think is doing very well. Yep. Lisa from Texas, hello Lisa. James in South Carolina. William in Mississippi. Stephen in Texas, hello Stephen. Daniel in Tennessee. We got Jason in Florida. Good to see you, brother, Jason. Who else do we have here? Let's see here. I know there's more of you. I don't want to miss any of you, okay? Brian from Virginia. There you are, brother. Good to see you. Andy from Kansas asking a good question. How did Governor Newsom survive a recall election? That's a good question,
because
Andy.
he's in California.
That could be part of it. Honestly, that could be part of it. And you know what? Here's the thing about Newsom. He's a politician. If you watched his interview with Charlie Kirk, he knows how to sound like a nice guy. He knows how to sound genuine. He knows how to be, kind of jovial and chipper and be someone who looks like, hey, he'd be fun to hang out with. And, who knows? Maybe he is. Maybe he's a fun guy to hang out with. I don't know. I just judge him by his policies.
I remember when he debated Ron DeSantis a while ago. I was actually nervous for DeSantis at first because Newsom is very, very slick, fast on his feet. He doesn't have a ton of substance, but he really can speak, frankly, well. So I was concerned for him. But you found out pretty quickly he doesn't actually have too much to say. He just can say it well.
That's exactly right. He's got that charisma. And, that can be something, folks, good to have discernment and wisdom, because obviously he's fooled a lot of people in California. A lot of people.
Yeah, I'd say don't underestimate him. I know conservatives like to say, he's the California governor. What's he doing? He's ruining his state. But he really knows what he's doing, at least when it comes to politics.
He knows how to get votes. And now, knowing how to institute good, morally right policies, not so much, but so much of politicians is getting those votes, man. And it's sad. It's unfortunate that that's the way it is. Good to see you, Andy, as well. Dave and Darlene from Virginia, hello. Great to see you guys also.
On Facebook, we have Ronnie, Alejandro, and Mark. Yesterday, we had quite a few people on Facebook. I failed to mention them, so now we have less people. They're punishing me.
I know we had Carol Lee on Facebook yesterday. I want to give a shout out to Carol Lee. She had some kind things to say. So, Carol Lee, great to see you wherever you are watching as well. All right, folks, markets here real quickly, much the same. The S&P 500 is creeping up towards the flat line, as is the NASDAQ. The Dow Jones is still down about a 0.5% or so, as we see here. All right, folks, we've got the ag report coming up in a little bit. Before we do that, let me just remind you, Shanna will be on the show tomorrow. I'm thrilled to have Shanna back on the show. It's going to be great. Make sure to get your calls queued up early on tomorrow. If you're joining the show tomorrow, 9:05 Eastern Time is the best time to call. We want to get as many calls as we can on Fridays, so make sure that you join us there tomorrow. Also, we'll be meeting for Bible study, too, at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll be in Daniel 6, so you can join us there if you'd like as well. It's always a good time. You can find the information on the website, financialissues.org, to go to the resources tab there. All right, Craig Haugaard coming up here with our ag report, and then when we come back, we'll talk more financial issues coming up right after this. Here's Craig.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for June 12th. Corn started out stronger based on optimism tied to the framework deal struck with China, but the early strength was squelched by good weather. The Corn Belt is forecast to receive rain over the next 10 days. On the demand side, the U.S. export offers remain the most competitive in the spot market, and U.S. continues to export corn via ethanol as it exports the margin created by a weak corn market and a strong energy market. At the close, July corn was $1.75 lower at $4.30 37 cents per bushel. For soybean traders, there wasn't enough follow-through detail in that framework agreement with China to sustain the soybean complex. But the idea that announcements soon to be coming kept the market from falling too far. Biofuel policy remains a top concern of the crush industry, as well as producers. It's one of the legs of the stool that the current price structure is resting on. The industry continues to operate on the hope that a retroactive payment will be available once the policy is announced. July beans finished the day 7.25 cents lower at 10.50 and a half. The wheat market has experienced a low volume and tight range session as the world really lacks a bull story from either the production side or the demand side. The weather forecast looks dry enough for a normal U.S. harvest and only a modest risk of quality decline. As a result, Minneapolis July wheat was 4 cents higher at 6.17 and a quarter, while Kansas City was a penny lower at 5.26 and a quarter, and we had Chicago a whopping 1/4 cent lower at 5.34 and a quarter. Cotton futures remain range bound. December futures ended the session 5 points higher at 67.76. Livestock futures were mixed. August live cattle were 17.5 cents lower at $218, 2.5 cents per hundredweight. August feeder cattle dropped by $2 7.5 cents, and they ended the session at $311, 7.5 cents per hundred. And we had July lean hog futures 65 cents better at $108.85 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures have pretty much been in a free fall the past few weeks, and we saw a continuation of that yesterday, with July down another 27 points at 18.25. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Egg update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. On top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support preborn.
Then they sat me down. If you were to die today, do you think you would go to heaven? And I was like, no. Keeping the child was my first stepping stone. And ever since then, God has cleaned me up from the inside out.
Help support women in need. Go to preborn.com/FISM.
From the time Crossroads began back in 1998, our sole focus was on reaching children in public schools in the United States. And then in 2017, we decided to translate our curriculum into Spanish, primarily so that we could serve Spanish-speaking churches and students in the U.S. And as I was connecting with a pastor in Chicago and telling him about the materials that Crossroads had in Spanish and about what Kids Club was all about, he said, "Hey, I have a friend in Mexico who I think would really benefit from these materials and your approach to working with children." And so I began the conversation with Rolando Gonzalez. In March of 2018, I traveled for the first time to Guadalajara and met with Rolando, and right away we just connected on a heart level. And so we sent a team in August of 2018 to train leaders here in Mexico, and the first international kids clubs were born.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachourschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Thanks for joining us, folks. As always, a delight to be here with you. A couple more of you over on Facebook. Lupe saying good morning. Good morning to you, sir. Lisa saying good morning. I don't know if that's our Lisa in the chat, but it might be, or it might be a different Lisa.
Double dipping?
That's right. And Timothy saying good morning. Great to see you, Timothy. Thanks for your encouragement of us, brother. I appreciate that. All right, Sam, so I teed it off at the top of the show. This worthless useless, godless form of legalized thievery that's so popular in our country. Ron DeSantis, God bless him, is looking to put an end to it. Tell us what it is, Sam. What is this?
Yes, so Ron DeSantis, his term as governor is coming to an end in 2026, and he wants to leave a lasting impact by finally, Seth, ending property taxes, or at the very least, radically reducing them in his state. DeSantis has called property taxes, quote, and this hits so well, the most oppressive and ineffective form of taxation, saying it's basically the same as paying rent to the government to live on your own property. And let me tell you, Seth, it sounds so much better coming from him himself. Here he is.
And these property taxes, it's like you buy a home, you buy land, maybe you buy the home outright, but maybe you pay off a mortgage over 30 years. And then, you've paid off the mortgage, you bought the land, you've been taxed many times. It's like, is it your property or not? Just for being on your property, you got to write a check to the government every year. So you're basically paying rent to the government to live on your own property.
Oh, it's so good, Seth.
It's awesome.
I've been saying that for years. I'm half tempted to have Grant play that clip again, but DeSantis does go on to say that rising property value unfairly punishes homeowners. Here he is again.
And that's the thing. If you buy a home for $300,000 and there's certain tax, well, then what? 10 years later, they say it's worth $700,000. And so, and they say, there's homestead stuff that helps protect you to a certain extent, but you're paying more. And the reality is you don't really know how much your home is worth until someone offers you money and is willing to pull the trigger on a sale. That's how a market works. You can say it's worth this much, but if no one's willing to come and offer you that much, then why should you pay taxes on that amount?
Oh, man.
Boy, he's right on.
That should just be
great,
on a loop.
Like
that should just be the whole show, is those clips over and over again. I love it so much. So DeSantis, what he's doing, he's pitching a constitutional amendment to ban property taxes in the state. That would be on the ballot in 2026. So like I said, one of the last things he would do as governor. In the meantime, he's also looking for ways to ease tax burdens through rebates and other programs, especially in poor rural areas in the state of Florida.
It's really good stuff, Sam. Folks, we've been talking about several politicians today. We mentioned Newsom earlier. We mentioned DeSantis now. We're judging them not by any kind of personal favor that we feel towards them, but by their actions, by their policies. This is a good policy. DeSantis is dropping truth bombs here. This is awesome. He's getting to an issue. Sam, interestingly enough here, we came dangerously close to having deal with something similar to this. Had we had Kamala Harris elected, praise God, we did not. Taxes on unrealized gains.
It's like the exact same thing, right? You're getting taxed for something you're not making money on.
It's exactly right.
Identical.
Yeah, absolutely. You are being punished because your house has increased in value, but you have not seen the realized gain in that until you sell the house. It's ridiculous. It really is. Sam, I'll pull the curtain back a little bit. My wife and I have a wonderful house. We have 3 children. It's a small house. We're in the spot where we're thinking, okay, should we find another house? We've been looking around, house hunting a little bit. There's some good houses out there, but you know what? The first thing we have to look at, if the house looks good, property taxes. How much money am I going to have to pay the stinking government every year to live on my house? And some of it's outrageous. It really is. Like, you're actually paying an equivalent amount of what would be rent in an apartment on top of your mortgage. It's crazy.
It's so really bad. Is. And it disincentivizes you from expanding, improving your home in any way. Right. For example, my parents have a couple acres of property, and my dad was thinking about building a shed or something, but he thought, no, I probably shouldn't, because that's going to improve my property taxes.
That's right.
Why, though? He's not hooking up electricity or water or anything like that. Yeah. And even if he was, he'd be paying for those utilities. So why are there more taxes just because he builds a new building on his property?
Absolutely. It's the same thing we talked about earlier with Rachel, honestly. You're incentivizing people to not succeed. You are encouraging people to remain in a bad situation. And it's really insidious, Sam, because I do think as a whole system, a lot of people in our government believe this. And as a whole system, this is the way it is. So many of them think it's our job. It's the government's job to come in and help. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to be self-sufficient. You can't do that. We would do it better. No, they wouldn't. They're terrible at it.
Well, according to this tax theory, they actually think they own the property. It's actually our property. We're just letting you live on it.
Exactly. It's it's egregious.
Which is crazy because the founding principles of the country are life, liberty, and property.
That's right.
You get the pursuit of happiness, but it was originally life, liberty, and property.
John Locke.
We're just going to ignore
century.
that one.
Yep, absolutely. It's a basic human right, basic fundamental human right. That property tax is undercut. They're a joke. They're an absolute joke.
Yeah, Seth, I'm not even a homeowner, but if I could get rid of just one tax on principal, it would be property tax.
Absolutely.
It doesn't even directly affect me. It does because I pay rent, and you bet your sweet bippy that I'm paying the property tax in that. But.
You're paying absolutely. It really is just crazy stuff, folks. You know, the American dream is a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. The system of paying the government rent to live in your home and then having to pay more in rent because you succeed is frankly stupid. It's so stupid. And I would get behind anyone who has some serious plans in place, actually putting work to abolishing property tax. Absolutely, I would. We need to steward our voice at the ballot box for that, to elect officials who are willing to slash big government, especially when it comes in its so many forms of what it does is legalized burglary of its own citizens.
So I know we have a lot of listeners in Florida, so I'd say start paying attention, vote for this ballot, because it's never been done before. So many people are afraid it's going to collapse society if you just stop paying your property tax. So I say go for it. Let's do it.
Absolutely, yes. So many
Prove it can be done.
In Florida. And you know, Sam, it was interesting. What happened here really was Florida succeeded. Florida got it right. So many people from our region, Philadelphia, New York, Boston, they wanted to, whether it was getting out of more liberal areas or they wanted to go to the sunshine, they were retired, they had some money, they moved down to Florida. And the more people that came down, it started to raise the value of homes, but also raise property taxes. So now DeSantis is trying to deal with this
because now you bought a home and all of a sudden you can't afford it. You could afford it 3 years ago, but now you can't, and nothing actually changed. You didn't do anything to improve the value. He talked about it right there. He said you buy your home for $300,000. Now all of a sudden it's worth $700,000. And even points out who's to decide that it's actually worth $700,000. It's only worth that if you sell it.
That's right. Yeah, well said, man. You know, speaking of home ownership, Sam, I saw an interesting sort of poll here that you had shared with me from CNBC. A lot of homeowners regret buying their home, probably for a lot of these reasons.
It is because of these reasons. So 45%, according to Bankrate, that's 45% of homeowners regret buying their current home. So maybe they don't necessarily regret buying a home per se, but they regret their current home. And the most common reason they regret it is because of maintenance costs and fees. This number is staggering, Seth. Homeowners spend over $18,000 on average each year on non-mortgage home expenses. Each and every year, $18,000 on top of what they're already paying for mortgages. So that's just mind-blowing. It's amazing anyone can afford a home with that kind of price. And of course, this goes to things like internet bills, other things like utilities, property taxes, and of course, home maintenance costs on top of that.
Yeah, that's really good, Sam. There's a couple things we can pull from this. Those stats don't lie, folks. Home maintenance is expensive. It is expensive. I'll tell you what, in the last 12 months, here's some of the things I've paid for, okay? And this is on top of the usual cost. Mortgage, insurance, all that stuff, taxes, is an upgrade to my fuse box. Funny story about a mouse getting into it. Full home replacement of sewage pipes, removal fees for uprooting a pesky bamboo forest, lawnmower tune-up so I can cut my grass, window repair, because a team of tree removers chipped the glass on one of our windows, our front window actually, while doing some necessary tree removal that's different from the bamboo, among many other things. All that stuff within the last year. Home ownership is expensive. It's worth it. It's a phenomenal investment, but it is expensive. Now, to the homeowner regret, I'll tell you, Sam, I did experience this for probably the first 4 years. We've been in our home for 7.5 years. So the first half of that, I experienced a little bit of that because it's hard. It's a hard thing to do. It's harder than renting. Renting is easier in the sense of someone else takes care of the toilet when it overflows. Someone else takes
post-renter's depression.
That's exactly right.
Depression,
I was like, man, this was easy. There's a great lesson here, though, I think, that parallels one of our core values at the ministry is investing for the long term. Home ownership is a great long-term investment, and it's taught me a lot. And, by God's grace, I've seen our investment pay off in tremendous ways. Our home has increased in value tremendously. And I've learned a lot too. And not only that, but we're able to be more hospitable than we would have been in our apartment. We have more space, different things like that. We have a place that can be claimed and conquered under the reign of King Jesus. And I'm proud to say that our home is a home where Jesus is Lord. And so there's obviously so much more memories and joy than I could shake a stick at. We brought each of our 3 kids home. We had Knox at home. So just amazing stuff.
With that pesky bamboo.
That's right. The pesky bamboo, which is by God's grace is all gone. But man, it was a hassle. Folks, the point with all that, a willingness to stick with something for the long term is a good thing. That applies to your investments. That applies to your marriage. That applies to raising children, applies to home ownership. I would pray that God would instill this kind of holy fortitude in us, this holy fortitude where we stick with what is good to see the long-term benefits of it. We're not tempted to take an easy route out, but we stick with it for the long term for the glory of God. That's core to our model here of investing here at the ministry, that you're in this weathering those market downturns and upswings for the long term. And I hope that each of you will take that to heart and do that in every area of your life. Boy, it was good to be here with you, folks. I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. And God willing, we'll do it again tomorrow. Remember, it's all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards. God bless.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.